All right, welcome to part 2 of section 2.1. So we're going to look at example 2 here, and we will have enough room to do this on our page, so I don't need to flip to another page. So what number 2 asks us to do is to find the absolute value, use the absolute value to determine the distance between each pair of numbers on the number line. And then it says to sketch a number line to show the solution. You guys don't need to sketch the number line. So just to show what I mean is, say I had 10 and 6, and I wanted to find the distance between those. Well, I would just take 10 and subtract 6, and we get 4. So we're going to use that same idea to find our answer for number 2. So with negative numbers, sometimes you need to think about it, right? Because when we had 10 and 6, well, I took the biggest number and subtracted the smallest number. So here you're like, well, negative 3.7 is bigger than negative 8.5, even though the number 8.5 is bigger than 3.7. So you're like, well, which one do I put first? Well, that's the beauty with the absolute values, is it doesn't matter which number you subtract from which number. We're still going to get the same answer at the end. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to take the absolute value of 3.7 minus negative 8.5. So just a note for you, you do have an absolute value button on your calculator. If you're dying to figure it out, you can figure it out on your own. But I'm not going to show you. Mwahaha. Okay, so let's take negative 3.7. We're going to subtract negative 8.5. And when we do that, we get 4.8. So when I'm doing an absolute value, I can't take the absolute value symbols away until I only have one number left in there. So what I have is I have the absolute value of 4.8, which is this 4.8. So I'm going to show you now that, well, what if we did negative 8.5 and we subtracted negative 3.7? What happens there? So let's do that. So I'm going to go negative 8.5 minus negative 3.7, and we get negative 4.8 inside the symbol. So when we evaluate that, oh, we still get 4.8. So here, it doesn't really matter which number's first, which number's second. You're still going to get the same answer. Well, that's really for us. So let's do B. So here we have fractions. So when your question is given to you as a fraction, it's nice to have our answer as a fraction. So I'm going to write this down, how we put this in our calculator. So when we have a mixed fraction, it's like we take the big number, the 4, okay, and we're going to add it to the fraction. So we're going to have 4 plus 2/3. And when we have a mixed fraction, I need brackets around the whole thing. So then I'm going to subtract negative 5 3/5. So when I have a negative fraction, the bracket needs to be totally on the outside of the whole thing. So I have negative and then 5 plus 3/5. Oops, I'm going to run out of room here. There we go. So now I'm going to put that in my calculator. So I have 4 plus 2/3 minus negative 5 plus 3/5. And then I'm going to math 1 that, and we get 154 over 15. Oops, inside the absolute value sign, which again is just 154 over 15. So notice in your answer, the answer is 10 4/5. Well, 154 over 15 is a perfectly good answer. You don't have to switch it to a mixed fraction unless you want to. Quickly, I can show you how to do that. I find the fastest way to do that is with long division. So if I divide 15 by 154, we say how many times does 15 go into 154? Well, it goes 10 times. So that's where we got the 10 part there. So 10 times 15 is 150. Then 154 minus 150 is 4. So that's where we got the 4. And then the denominator always stays the same. So that's how we got 10 4/5. So again, you can just leave your answer as 154 over 15, and that's perfectly fine. So let's look back. Oops, let's look at example 3 here. So there's a couple of concepts I wanna talk about. So one thing I want to point out is that if we take 10 and we multiply it by 3, and then we divide it by 3, we get 10. Why? Because multiplying and dividing are opposite operations. So we're going to see, well, we're also going to see that square roots and squaring. So let's say I had, here we go. So taking the square root and then squaring are also opposite operations. The other thing I want to point out is, say we are looking for the square root of 9. So the answer for that would be 3 or negative 3. Why? Well, because 3 squared gives us 9, and negative 3 squared also gives us 9. So instead of writing these two answers, we can actually write the absolute value of 3 is what the square root of 9 is. So let's use this concept to do number 3 here. So what I notice here is I'm finding the square of a square root. Okay, so if I was doing the same thing here, because squaring and the square root are opposites, we end up getting the absolute value of 10. So we're going to get a similar thing here. So if I take the square root of 7 minus 10 squared, what I really am going to get is the absolute value of 7 minus 10. So 7 minus 10 is negative 3. And then the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. So we're going to look at example 4 in our next video. We won't have enough room. I won't have enough room to do it on the page. Sorry, Jordan, but you can, if you want, try to squish it in. Okay, so I'll see you for the next example.